The Honda CB300R brings in a new era for the brand due to the technological advancements appearing for the first time in the entry-level segment. Yes, the styling is as good as it looks on the photos, and it's a miniature replica of the Honda CB1000R, and the bike has a very distinctive, almost European look. But I'm more interested in the technology. The bike has lost almost 16 kg over the previous version. That number might look surprising, but Japanese bikes have always used a heavier perimeter type frame, which they are now replacing with lighter tubular steel frames or trellis frames. The same way the Ninja 400 is significantly lighter than the Ninja 300, Honda has gone all out on the frame though, but we'll discuss that later while riding. The result, however, is 147 kg of curb weight with a very rigid frame. Coming back to the styling, the dual chamber headlamps remind me of the Ducati Monster, and the exposed engine, the huge 41mm upside down SHOWA forks, the way the radiator is jutting out, it's all very minimalist and has a clean European vibe. Minimalism is visible on the tank as well, with a narrow and chiseled design and a modest capacity of 10 liters. I know some of my long tourer friends would get disappointed, but combined with the mileage that this bike delivers, I think the range will be decent. Of course, if you're deciding to take it to remote places where fuel pumps are hundreds of kilometers in distance, then the 10-liter fuel tank might be a problem. The bike comes in two colorways, the red, which we have, and the matte black version. I definitely like the black one more. Honda has launched a list of accessories along with the bike, and though I find them rather expensive, they're there for the enthusiast. The 286cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine produces 30 horsepower at 8000 rpm and 27.4 Nm of torque at a relatively low 6000 rpm. The bike is truly a low and mid-range beast. Braking duties are taken care of by a 296mm single disc up front with radially mounted Nissan 4-piston calipers. The rear gets a 220mm disc. The dual channel ABS didn't surprise me, but it has an IMU. That was the surprising part. Something that gives this bike positional awareness, so it can calculate the amount of ABS intervention needed based on the bike's position, lean angle, wheel spinning, etc. And that, my friends, is a segment first. The tires are wide and grippy, and something I'm glad they didn't compromise on. Overall, the bike looks and feels very premium, and coming from a brand like Honda, I feel the 2.9 lakhs on-road price is justified. But theory can take us only so far, and now it's time to put it through the road test. Initially, when I got the bike, I was a little bit disappointed because the foot pegs seemed a little bit too much front set. The handlebars seemed a little bit too low for my comfort, and that's kind of, I got adjusted to it. That's what I have to tell you. Just spend a few hundred kilometers on the motorcycle and you'll be fine. It's actually comfortable once you get used to it. Yes, the handlebars are low and bit aggressive. I guess that's their way of trying to justify the cafe racer tag, but that does keep very handy in the cornering when you're putting the bike through some high speed corners. So very much satisfied with the ergonomics. Wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10, maybe an 8.5 out of 10, but reasonably good motorcycle. The suspension, I mean, is doing a really good job. I went to 149, 50, 51, 52, 53, 153 kilometers per hour, 54. I kind of feel that could have gone a bit further. Could have gone a bit further than 154. That was the best 0 to 100 of, so far. Also, was riding the Duke 200 here just last week. This bike is doing much better than the Duke 200 in corners. I mean, Have ridden the BMW S1000R in the corners. I've ridden the Ninja 400 on the same corners. This is doing better. Amazing job on the chassis and the suspension by Honda, because I definitely feel the difference. But oh, you can drop anchor. I mean, if you're doing both the brakes, I mean, just look at this bike, slow down, and such an easy bike to U-turn with once you get the hang of it. Very rapid in the lower. You know, once the engine is opening up under the acceleration, I mean, you can understand how good this bike is. Because of the light weight though, even the slightest of bumps are kind of moving this bike around, and that's something that I wasn't expecting. That's just because the bike's so light. The slightest of bumps kind of, you know, the suspension's very much up for it, and so is the chassis. But and I am doing really high speeds, so that has to count for something. Oh man, 134 on the corner. I think this is the first time on the right corner I got 133 kilometers per hour. I'm gonna anchor myself through the corner. This is me pinning the throttle, 140 kilometers per hour on the exit speed. Early morning on the Honda CB300R. Been riding it quite a while. Last night as well. Did a lot of city riding. Tested out the headlamps. Pretty good, amazing LED headlamps. Flickable motorcycle. Weighs like a 150cc motorcycle, but it has a 286cc single cylinder engine. And it's very eager to go right off the line. Just let go of the clutch and the bike just wheelies out, kind of that sort of eagerness. Vibrations very well controlled on the bike. There's a little bit of vibration on the handlebars. And the main thing about this bike's the curb weight, which is just 147 kilograms, which is about 16 kgs lighter over the previous version. And that astonishing number has been possible because this motorcycle has a lightweight tubular steel frame, and Honda made a special frame which was so light that they actually had to reduce the wall, the frame's steel wall thickness, to a minimum. So that compromises with the rigidity of the motorcycle. So the frame became weak to make it light, and then they added steel plates, somewhat like what you see on bridge cross bracings, and then they connected that directly to the shock absorbers, finally gaining in the rigidity. And yeah, it does feel like the steel frame, steel trellis frame on the KTM. It's very rigid. It's giving this bike great handling and dynamics. At the same time, it's the main reason the bike has such a less dramatic weight. They have reduced other components, they have slimmed it down in styling. So by going back to the essentials, they managed to do quite a lot of weight saving, and they're using the same 286cc engine that they've used previously on other bikes, but they haven't used it in any bike in India previously. But even with the same engine, has got a new life thanks to the lighter weight new motorcycle. Okay, that was completely unacceptable. Knows how to hold the line. It's very flickable, very easy to turn in through corners. Talk about the ride quality. Apart from the frame, the suspension's 41mm SHOWA upside down forks up front, really well damped, nice compression and rebound. They're not adjustable, but they've been adjusted from factory very well. I mean, I was talking yesterday that the Dominus kind of too soft and the Duke's kind of too hard. If you find a middle ground, you would get somewhere close to the Honda. So going over some really bad patches of road and surprisingly well damped. Really bad patch of road. So tested out the brakes, saw a big pothole, had to break it down. 296mm single disc up front, 220 on the back, used both the brakes, works like a charm. And it does have dual channel ABS as standard, and that ABS is actually powered by an IMU, and specifically because of the power to weight ratio I'm talking about. I mean, if you take a look at the Duke 250, I've written that it's 29.9 bhp, this is 30, almost the same. No drama in the braking, very nicely stops, smoothly stops, use both the brakes. There's not much bite, and I guess that's because of the smaller disc size. When you increase it to about 310 or 320, that is where you get the initial bite. And that's not there on this bike, but the progressive is very strong, and that's always been there, I feel, because of the Nissan calipers. Open up the throttle. The bike makes its peak power right at 8,000 RPM, so that means it's a pretty low revving motorcycle. Even the Duke makes its peak power at 9,500 RPM. This makes a peak power at 8,000 and 27.4 Newton meters of torque at a very low 6,500 RPM. It's like cruiser sort of RPM. So ride out in the city, you feel that. I mean, this is a 30 bhp motorcycle, but ride it doesn't feel like that. And I'm just saying that because I've ridden the Duke 250. If I had to bet, KTMs have pulled in surprises because Duke has a bigger sprocket, but if I had to bet, I would bet this would win the drag. So looks wise, yeah, this is more expensive than the KTM. It's almost as costly as the 390. I believe the 390 is only about maybe 7,000-8,000 more than this, and it is still significantly less power than a 390, but also 20 kgs lighter. I would try to hammer that in. Let's take a look at the console. It's a small console, but it's got a lot of information. You've got on the left side, you've got the fuel gauge. On the right side, you've got the temperature gauge, and right next to the fuel gauge, you've got the tacho, and then the big speedo, trip meters, couple of trip meters, odometer, fuel consumption. It's showing 35 right now. It's live fuel consumption. Now it's 32. Well, whatever. One thing that's missing, that's the gear position indicator. I would have wanted that. KTMs have it, a lot of other brands, even smaller displacement motorcycles have it. If you compare it with the Duke 250, the headlamp is standard halogen, so styling wise this does look more prominent, because the Duke 250, it has the 390's bodywork, which makes it look really nice, but as they've skimped out on the LED headlamps part, when you compare it with this is a fresh new looking motorcycle. Going through the corner, I just realized how good a job Honda has done on the suspension and the frame. It was really light, really agile, really flexible, and I was kind of thinking that's one good thing while riding it in the city. But the front, if it's too light, it kind of doesn't hold the line very well in corners. Absolutely wrong about this bike. Holds the line like a charm, as if it's on rails. I mean, I have to praise the tires as well. They're playing a part. 29 on the front, 33 on the rear. That's the recommended air pressure. Keep it there and you'll love it. Been riding the Honda CB300R since last night, and I'm superbly impressed. Got the motorcycle from DUGAR Honda, so special thanks to them. But this bike has been a complete game changer from Honda, so I'll just walk you through whatever I've felt. Last night got it in some insane traffic, and very lightweight motorcycle, doesn't tire you out. Even the clutch has a nice way feel to it, but doesn't tire out the fingers. So easiest bike to filter through, 147 kg of curb weight, really speaking it through. And then just as you open the throttle, there's an amount of jumpiness which I really enjoy, but maybe beginner riders will find it a bit challenging. But that actually is a good thing, because whenever you see a gap you can squeeze through, and the low end torque is just so freaking amazing. I mean, you can just overtake through traffic, and that was last night's impression. Along with the LED headlamps, they cast a wide beam, and whenever you push it to the high beam, it's amazing. Probably the best headlights after Dominar, or maybe even close to Dominar, or even better than that. Didn't have the Dominar to compare side by side, but one of the best headlamps in this segment of motorcycles that I've seen. And then when I started cornering, the bike really feels on its own. The SHOWA 41mm USD forks are absolutely amazing. Even the rear shocks are great. I've never felt so much confidence on the corners. Apart from the Duke 390, none other motorcycle has given so much front end feel and cornering stability. The demands are groundbreaking. You cannot have this bike even if you book it till September or even October. So yeah, the Indian market has responded to something of an exceptional product. And Honda, I have not been able to find any problems with it. The ergonomics, I was not fine with it when I got onto it, but after I've gotten used to it, yeah, maybe the bars are a bit low, but this is no reason to complain. This bike gives me no reason to complain. It's amazing. Well done, Honda. You should try to get yourself. I mean, unless you're looking for a little bit more power on the Duke 390, apart from that, nothing else will stop this bike. So definitely gets my full recommendation.